Buongiorno, sono Marco. Vi informiamo che potete seguire l'appuntamento in diverse lingue grazie a un servizio di supporto alla comprensione simultanea realizzato con intelligenza artificiale, accessibile direttamente dal vostro cellulare. Vi chiedo qualche secondo per spiegarvi come funziona. Per prima cosa, prendete il vostro telefonino e inquadrate il codice QR che vedete nel video. In questo modo potrete scaricare sul vostro cellulare l'app di Interprefy con cui viene gestita la traduzione. Vi lascio ancora un secondo per inquadrare il codice QR. Dopo aver scansionato il codice QR, si aprirà la app. Scrivete nel riquadro al centro la password che vedete qui e fate tap sul bottone con la scritta Connect in basso. Si apre così la vostra schermata operativa. Facendo tap in basso a sinistra, sulla scritta English indicata dal riquadro, si aprirà una schermata che vi permette di scegliere l'audio della lingua di preferenza, inglese o italiano. Usate le vostre cuffie e ascoltate o la lingua originale o la versione tradotta dall'intelligenza artificiale. Facendo tap in basso a destra, sulla scritta CC indicata dal riquadro, invece potrete scegliere di attivare i sottotitoli e leggere la trascrizione della lingua originale o della lingua tradotta con l'intelligenza artificiale. Per uscire dalla app sarà sufficiente far tap sul simbolo in alto a sinistra indicato dal riquadro e poi cliccare su Leave. Vi faccio vedere ancora una volta il codice QR per accedere alla app. La traduzione con intelligenza artificiale è in continuo sviluppo. Vi invitiamo a usare questo servizio per contribuire a migliorarlo. Grazie.
Da Trieste all'Adige alle Alpi c'è una voce che dà forma alle notizie, spazio alle persone. È la voce di Nord-Est Multimedia, con un portale digitale e 6 quotidiani radicati in 8 province di Veneto e Friuli Venezia Giulia. Ogni giorno raggiunge decine e decine di migliaia di lettori sulla carta e ogni mese milioni di utenti sulle piattaforme digitali. Ogni anno anima oltre 100 giornate di eventi, costruendo spazi di confronto aperto su impresa, economia e cultura, scienza e sport. La voce del Nord-Est, la nostra voce, la vostra voce.
Good morning and welcome everybody to this panel with Michael Payne. I'm Giovanni Armanini. I'm the managing editor of sports for the Northeast Multimedia Group. I think Michael doesn't need any presentation because for sure you know his book, you know his career, which has been mostly into the International Olympics Committee. Thank you, Michael, for joining me today. And I will go immediately to some points that we want to touch with Michael today, and of course, giving you the opportunity to give some questions, maybe at the end, but will not take too long to touch some points that I think will be very interesting to hear from you today. Starting, Michael, from the first, because we are in Belluno, of course. In February, this city had the big opportunity to host a Winter Olympics edition. So, first of all, what's your opinion about how it went in February this year here in Belluno for Milano Cortina?
Well, good morning, everybody. It's a great pleasure to be with you at this conference, and my apologies for not being able to address you in Italian, but hopefully you can follow with AI and my English. Milano Cortina Olympic Games. They were my 23rd Olympic Games, winter and summer. My first Olympic Games was Sarajevo, 1984. So I've had the opportunity and the privilege to witness the incredible Olympic journey. And honestly, I can say Milano Cortina were truly great Olympic Winter Games. And perhaps before I talk a little bit about the Games, let me take you back to last February and those magical moments. And the technology, the technicians have been doing a great job and have been able to pull together a short 3-minute video to remind us quite how special and how Italian those Winter Olympic Games were. Oh, I mean, they were great games. I mean, truly. And you say, why? Well, first, the sport was brilliant. The stage that Italy presented, the backdrop of the Dolomites, it was an incredible stage for the athletes. And no disrespect to the previous Winter Olympic Games, but the previous 3 editions had taken place in Beijing, which isn't normally the first image of a winter ski resort, Pyeongchang in Korea, and Sochi in Russia. They were all good games, but there was something authentic about coming back to the Alps. And that authenticity, the stage, the weather, the storytelling of the athletes, importantly for Italy, you were quite successful on the stage. That's always critical for the host nation. And so it all came together. I have to say that 2 weeks before the Games, very few people were sleeping well, because these were the most complicated footprint ever. The Olympic Winter Games had never been so spread out. And so there was big question marks about the logistics. How would it work? As always, everything comes together at the last minute. And the Italians certainly showed how it was possible to come together at the last minute. The CEO of the organizing committee was a close friend, and I'm not even sure he thought he could pull it off. But it was pulled off, and it was great. It might be 1 or 2 still lessons to learn for the future, but...
We are used to this because Italians, when they have university examination, they do everything last minute. So we are trained in our life to do exactly this all our life. We wait, and then at the last minute we are great.
I think everybody would like to do that, but nobody was as successful as Italy was at pulling it off at the last second.
So the experiment of having different venues has been challenged by the CEO in the past. Now we have seen this experiment also. We already know that in the next Winter Olympics there will be part of the Olympics in Italy as well. What's your opinion about this? It will be possible to see something similar also for the Summer Olympics? Of course, remembering that already, for instance, football tournaments are played not exactly in the city. London was in Manchester and Paris was in Lyon. But what's your opinion about this distribution of venues?
It's a very topical debate at the moment. Does the Olympics lose something by being spread out too far? How important is it to have that intimacy of bringing everything together? And this is a trade-off because you have to have the venues. And finding a solution that has all the venues, but not compromising what makes the Olympics special, I think is still, to be honest, is still work in progress. Milano Cortina proved that it can be done, and can be done successfully. The next Winter Olympic Games will be in France. And there they are struggling, because the original idea was the skiing in the Alps and the ice in Nice. That was going to be even greater distances than the Milano Cortina link. And now the local politics in Nice, I think they will end up with no events, and everything will be moved to Lyon, that will be more compact. After that, Winter Olympic Games will be in Salt Lake City, which will be very compact. So maybe because I'm a traditionalist, if you can make it compact, meaning you don't have to build new venues that become white elephants, there must be a proper legacy plan for the venues. At the IOC, we took the position, either there is legacy or make it temporary. You may remember in the media, the IOC had a big row with the Italian political system over the renovation of the Eugenie Monti bobsleigh run, because the view was it costs too much money, it's going to take too long, not many people use and practice bobsleigh, why don't you use an existing track in Austria, elsewhere? I mean, the Italian politicians said, no, we insist on rebuilding the track, and to your full credit, delivered it on time, and it worked. But when you're looking at the Olympics, you are also in the risk business. The complexity of pulling everything together. And when you look at it in a Summer Games, Los Angeles will be 36 sports. To show the explosion and growth, that is double the last time Los Angeles staged the Olympic Games. And actually, the spread out with the Summer Games in Los Angeles probably will be similar to what we experienced in Milano Cortina. So, it worked, but I don't think it should be automatically always the model, because you do risk losing what makes it special, of having all of the athletes living together, interacting together, as opposed to a series of spread out world championships.
Another point about innovation and so was for us as journalists at the end when the Paralympics started. So we tried to ask ourselves first and then to the Olympic Committee, why not in the future to merge Paralympics and Olympics to show up that sport is sport, first of all, and to give even more audiences to Paralympics. Sometimes the impression was that, okay, there has been the Olympics and now there is the tail of the Paralympics. So give even more value to the Paralympics, so merging the two things, doing medals and so sports together. This was an idea. We had the answer, no, that's the format and it's here to stay. What's your opinion on that?
Again, another very topical question. And I think it's good to put these issues out on the table and have a open debate, as opposed to just saying, no, that's the format, that's how it's always been, no need to change. The Paralympics have been an incredible success story over my time. 25 years ago, they had virtually no profile, and they really were ignored. Today, they have become a major event in their own right. The sporting skill of these athletes is phenomenal. And you see the business marketing community really embracing the story of these athletes. And I remember back at the London Olympic Games, the advertising and marketing of the sponsors was probably stronger and more creative around the Paralympic Games than it was around the Olympic Games. Now, can you put the two together? Bearing in mind whether it's the Winter Games or the Summer Games, you are already breaking the system with the number of athletes, the number of sports, the number of venues that you are putting together at the same time. I honestly don't think you can add anything more than you will break the system. The Los Angeles at 36 sports has to be cut back because you just can't sustain it. And we've seen in previous Olympic Games, whether it was Atlanta or Rio, it became too big and broke the system and very nearly collapsed the Olympic Games. So I think it's impossible to put one on top of the other. Can you have one or two disabled or Paralympic events inside the Olympics as a preview to the Paralympics? Yes. Can you maybe tighten the window, the gap between the Olympics and the Paralympics? Or do you stage the Paralympics before the Olympics as part of the build-up to be looked at? But they still need a week to convert the village, the venues, to make it completely, Paralympic friendly. So the operational technicalities of that make it very difficult.
So let's try to move forward with trying to understand what's behind the Olympics and what's in the Olympics branding, because you are considered the father of the Olympic brand. Or someone said this, even because, when I read this, I said, okay, being the father means that before there was nothing. So, but the Olympics, of course, were born before me and before you. So what has been the single most important decision that you made in your role, of course, in the marketing department of the CEO, that had such a big impact on something so big, which is considered so big in the world, even before 83, 84, when you were appointed?
There's a lot of issues in there. Let me try and break it down. First of all, in terms of background, I joined the IOC in the early 1980s, when the Olympics were bankrupt. And people forget, when they look at the billions of dollars involved today in the Olympics, it's difficult to imagine that the Olympics were bankrupt. In early 1980s, there was no money. Nobody wanted to host the Olympic Games. And if you could find somebody to host the Games, odds on, half the people wouldn't turn up because the Olympics was caught as a pawn in the political superpowers between the Soviet Union and America, and the cancer of boycotts. Most of the media at the time were writing the obituary of the Olympics, saying, well, they were wonderful in the 20th century whilst they lasted, but they've become too political, too expensive. They won't continue. Unfortunately, that's progress in the 20th century. And it was thanks to an incredible, visionary, strategic leader, my boss at the time, the IOC president, Juan Antonio Samaranch, who took the Olympics and turned it around with the business strategy that I write about in the book, the political strategy to stop the idea of boycotts, and slowly to bring it back. And that was the incredible business journey was on. Now, brand. And everybody today is talking about brand management. And I'm credited of introducing the concept of brand management into the Olympics. And I remember when I first started discussing brand within the Olympics, I was nearly fired because people said, we are not a brand. The Olympics has been there for thousands of years. Don't start coming in here with all that funny brand management from Coca-Cola or whatever and corrupting the Olympic ideal. And I mean, they were right. The Olympics is not a brand. It's this incredible movement that founded thousands of years ago. But as we began to look at how do we create a partnership with the business community, we also understood early on, we need to make sure that we protect what it is that makes the Olympics special. We need to invest in what it is that makes the Olympics special. And we didn't have a clue what the Olympic brand and image stood for. And why did people care about it? So we said, why don't we study how the world's greatest brands look to protect their image, develop their image, and see if there are any lessons to learn without using the word brand. And that was once we got over the first hurdle of basically not being bankrupt and having enough money coming in to survive, then started to look at how do you invest. And that became the beginning of the brand management. And I give you one example. We're short of money. So Samaranch said to me, I think you will have to introduce advertising in the Olympic Stadium. And most people will say, well, there's already advertising in the stadium. Not at the Olympics. Originally, because they were being conservative, and no, we don't want to have any commercialization. And so the Olympics was the last one to come to the party and not have advertising in the stadium. And if you go and look at, like the images you just saw there, most people don't realize there's no advertising in the stadium until you point it out. And then everybody goes, now you mention it, it does look different. So we began to understand that that was a key point of difference, that the athletes were only performing in front of the 5 Olympic rings, that the stage was dressed for the host city and the Olympics, as opposed to being, forgive me, the FIFA World Cup. If you were to turn off the sound and just look at the images, you have no idea where it's being played, because the advertising signs are the same and the sport is being played. No, so we went out of our way to protect what was called the clean venue. And it was some of those policies that I really championed. And that's probably why, because it was, we operated a zero tolerance. And, an athlete caught breaching the guidelines and given one warning, and afterwards would lose the medal. And people would say, but that's way too tough, you're crazy. But if you didn't protect the integrity of what is the world's largest event, when the whole world is watching, every single commercial agenda, political agenda will hijack the story. And so that's how we moved there.
You told about nations boycotting Olympics. I have the feeling that in the last 20 years, to be into the Olympic movement has been or became more important than to call the nation outside of the Olympics. So it's more important to be in than to boycott when you want to show your identity to the world. What happened to change this? Because we've seen the Russian issue in the last years. Now they are in, I think, because Paralympics, they're getting there. Yeah, basically Paralympics was already a trial for this. But anyway, what happened in the middle? Because if we look back, there has always been politics from the beginning, starting from, I don't know, the Suez crisis after the World War II and so on. So everything, when you say in your book, business is sport and sport is business, okay, but many times we call business what it actually is, more politics than business. But what happened to change this behavior from the nations?
You're asking all the topical questions, the great questions, the politics, and you cannot divorce the politics from sport and staging a global event. And it's, again, the big debate. How involved is politics? Should sport be involved in politics? But you cannot ignore it. And if you recall, when the political boycotts of the 80s, starting off with the Africans in Montreal, then then the Americans, the West in Moscow, then the Soviets in LA, very nearly broke the Olympic world.
That's why they invented the Goodwill Games next.
That was also a parallel issue with the explosion of TV and sport, and come to that. And Samaranch, in order to unite the world, he started meeting with all of the world's politicians and basically saying, look, the mission is to bring everybody together, which is not a bad thing. All due respect, the boycotts have achieved nothing. So if you've got a problem, speak to me. And the mantra, very simple, much better to avoid a problem than to solve it. And so he made a point of getting out on the front foot, and whether it was the sensitivity over South Africa, black athletes being prevented, and so the whole boycott with apartheid, which is why all the African nations boycotted Montreal, that he engaged all of the world's leaders in a debate to say, better we all come together. And with very strategic, diplomatic, political skills, brought the world together. I mean, including Machiavellian double-crossing North Korea in order to prevent the boycott of South Korea. I mean, it's a political spy thriller worthy of the highest level of intrigue, and the stories are all told in the book. And we then had 25 years of relative calm, and politicians left sport alone. And then, following Sochi, we had the Russian intervention in Crimea, then Ukraine, and that immediately put sport back on, the politics of sport back on the front page as to who should be allowed to compete. And you've then got every, not every, but politicians of different sort, all getting up on their soapbox and saying, that country shouldn't be allowed to attend, that athlete shouldn't be allowed to attend. And one of, I think, the biggest risks facing sport is the growing politicization of sport. I think it was a mistake of the IOC to suspend Russia. And I know that is a very provocative statement to make. But once you've let the genie out of the bottle, well, why not suspend Israel for their invasion in Palestine? Why not suspend America for their invasion in whichever country you want to choose this month? So you crossed a red line. And at the time, I said to President Bach, I think you're making a mistake. Here is an alternative way to deal with the problem. And the whole Russian problem is completely intermixed with the little misunderstanding in Sochi around doping, where the KGB created a parallel doping lab underground with a little mouse hole between the official lab and the KGB lab, where every night they would pass the urine samples through to the KGB to be cleaned and passed back so that all of the Russian team passed the doping test. And this came out 3-4 years after the games. So there was so much baggage in the cupboard dealing with Russia that the invasion was the last drop, with tremendous political pressure from elements of the West to say, if you don't suspend Russia, we'll boycott. The proposal I made to Bach was, if we all agree that Russia has been a naughty boy on doping, and let's be clear, they're not the only nation that's naughty, but they took government interference to a new level. If it's clear that this is state-driven, why don't you fine the state and still protect the athletes? Why don't you fine the state $1 billion, paid out $100 million a year over 10 years into a new fund to fight doping? If the IOC had done that, they wouldn't have been viewed by the media and everybody else as being soft. Because previously, for the doping problems, they sort of said, naughty, naughty, and fined $1 million or $2 million. It was a joke. You needed an absolute jaw-dropping sanction. And if that sanction had been applied, the IOC would have had far more flexibility to turn around and say, don't you accuse me of being soft on Russia, look at what I've just done. And I had been very involved in a number of important deals with Russia, including taking Formula One to Russia and the negotiations with Putin. And I knew exactly how this would play out. Because when we did the deal with Bernie Ecclestone and Putin for what was $500 million, Ecclestone met Putin to have the final discussion. They spent 2 hours talking about everything except the deal. And at the end of the deal, the end of the meeting, Putin picked up the phone on some friendly oligarch and gave him the good news that he was the new sponsor of Formula One for $500 million. That's exactly what would have happened on the doping issue. And, I mean, Bach said, I wish you'd told me that 2 weeks previously. It's too late now to put that in play. But, sorry, long-winded. There's always lots of stories behind the scenes. But I think it was a mistake to drop Russia because of the precedent it sets for other nations. And if the IOC had been tougher over the doping, they would have had the flexibility to say to Russia, no flag, no anthem, but all athletes are still coming.
Thank you for being so straight and honest, even because it's amazing to hear it from your voice, because I have the feeling many times in English you are more straight than what as Italians we can do, even because if I compare your headline fast track and dark deals with
that's the English version, the Italian
English
publishers.
version. And I don't want to criticize your publisher, but honestly, fast track and dark deals against lo sport e business, il business e sport is like pasta and pasta without salt. It's, come on, this is a book I would buy. That's not.
The stories are the same, just the cover.
Yeah, of course. But I'll be exactly straight like you, asking you, do you think to put the picture of Ukrainian soldiers in an helmet is a political message?
Unfortunately, yes. And this comes back again to the zero tolerance issue of the field of play. And let me give you some of the internal thinking that went on before that decision was taken. Imagine you get to the medal awards rostrum, and on the rostrum you have an Israeli, an American, and an Iranian. And the Iranian or any one of the athletes are put under tremendous pressure to make a statement against their competitor, their athlete, some sign or whatever. The moment you allow any form of statement whatsoever, no matter how sympathetic you are to the cause, you open up the Pandora's box. So on that helmet issue, the IOC said, you can wear the helmet in training. You can wear the helmet in the press conferences. We are not, well, it's not we, I was no longer there. The IOC is not trying to curtail freedom of speech. You have the world's stage where you can make the statements, but not for that 90 seconds. The Ukrainians knew exactly what they were doing. This was completely stage managed and planned. Weeks before it was known that this was going to happen, to create an incident, to get it full speed on the news. The mistake that the IOC made is knowing full well this was going to happen. Why on earth was there no back-channel discussion with Zelensky directly to negotiate and broker a deal? As I said before with Samaranch, much better to avoid a problem than to solve it. And the new president at the IOC was too new in the job, too young and naive in order to get on the front foot politically and prevent what was a PR disaster.
A little bit different because it's not strictly related to Olympics. You said Samaranch was very good at talking with every nation. Gianni Infantino is using the same storytelling. Do you think they're on the same level? Do you think the initiative is as good as the one from Samaranch?
No.
You didn't expect that,
no.
I know.
I mean, you cannot compare. Infantino started out actually with, I think his strategy was totally correct. You have to engage with the leader of the host country. Ignore the politics, ignore whether you agree with him or don't agree with him. You need the support of the head of state and the power of the government. And to be honest, when we had the Olympic Games in Atlanta in 1996, I wish we'd had that level of support from Washington. One of the reasons those games ran into such serious problems was because we didn't have that support. So the starting point of going out of your way to engage with the head of state, if that's who the host country is, you have to go and connect with them. Doesn't mean you've got to go and sleep with them. And where I think Infantino made a fatal error was awarding the FIFA Peace Prize. Because that was politicizing the sport in a way you didn't have to. He was already so close to Infantino, he didn't have to go and give him another trophy, and basically made a laughingstock and undermined his credibility, with much of the world. It was not necessary. And I mean, in footballing terms, you would say it was a classic own goal. So I think the original strategy and intentions were right, but somewhere along the line lost the plot.
I'd like to engage also our audience in a minute. I have one more very important thing to ask you. Olympics are, of course, the biggest stage of sports all around the world. but they are under attack. You mentioned doping. I can mention from Russia the initiative to create the so-called friendship games. We've seen the so-called enhanced games. Do you think, and there is a big topic which to me is the biggest one, which is about how to pay out prizes and not just prizes, because we are not talking just about the winners, but about the complete movement to athletes. What do you see in the future of Olympics on these very important topics? We talked a lot now about the political environment, but there's not just this. So what do you see in the future, looking also, especially at this attack to the Olympic movement? And in the meantime, if you can get, I don't know if there's I can say in Italian, se c'è un microfono o non so se qualcuno ve lo parla, ok, così dopo che ha risposto potete iniziare a fare le vostre domande, grazie.
In many ways, you know, the Olympics has always been under attack because it's impossible. No, we succeed. It is very difficult to stage the world's largest event and get 210 countries to turn up each time and pull it off. The complexity behind the scenes, the potential. I mean, a couple of stories. During the opening ceremony of the Pyeongchang Winter Olympic Games, all the lights went out and suddenly had to go on to emergency generators. And the organizing committee realized the complete computer system had been taken down, had been hacked. There'd be no games the next morning because nothing would work. Accreditation, security, everything down. And the Koreans, to their credit, overnight rebuilt the total technical infrastructure, and the games happened, and nobody knew what had happened. And everybody assumed, sort of eventually, realized it was a hack. And all of the fingerprints, all of the crumbs, led to North Korea. Expected that North Korea would do everything to disrupt South Korea's success. And then a few people thought, hang on, this doesn't make sense. North Korea, a week before the Games, agreed to attend and participate. So why would they be trying to unravel it? And 1 year's worth of digital detectives eventually tracked all of the crumbs and the evidence and the false leads all the way to the Kremlin. And it was the Kremlin that tried to set up North Korea as the patsy because Russia wasn't allowed to participate. So if they can't have a party, then nobody else can. So they've always been under attack, and it requires the leadership of the IOC to be exceedingly agile and political and diplomatic and business to keep the show alive. Now, we've just come off the Milano Cortina Games, which under any criteria would have been seen as very successful. Proof? The TV ratings around the world increased. As much as TV audiences are going down, the younger generation not engaging as much, Milano Cortina increased. Great games. Paris increased. Great games. So the product is in robust health. working. The challenge is managing that product and the organization, and I worry that my old employer, the IOC, has become too bureaucratic, too process-oriented, and has lost some of its sense of innovation that was so fundamental to turning it around and surviving. Now, you mentioned 3 or 4 other
Prizes and doping, mostly.
Actions. I mean, doping is serious. Far more serious is match fixing and betting, because that is going to the integrity of sport, whether the result is fixed. I mean, in America, you look at America with the NFL, MLB, and pro sport, they don't care about doping. They really don't. I mean, you look at the athletes and everything else, and the rock star heroes, if you get caught doping in America, naughty, naughty, 1 month fine. Get caught a second time, naughty, 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 2 months fine. I mean, in the rest of the world, you're fined for life. So doping isn't the issue. Fixing the result is. We just had these, the enhanced games. A complete fraud. The stock price dropped from $100 to $30 the day after the event. Nobody cared. They had to suddenly scramble to get back in the news by now offering a $10 million prize money for beating the world record. It's got nothing to do with sport. They're trying to use sport as cover to sell drugs for life longevity. And I mean, it had zero. It had a fair bit of media, print media coverage because of the conflict, and it was good headlines. But who won? The clean athletes. It completely ruined their narrative. Friendship games, other attempts, no. It's that when Ted Turner tried to introduce the Goodwill Games in the middle of the boycott era, there we were paying a bit of attention. But now nobody's losing any sleep. But when you come to issues like prize money, how should the IOC continue to evolve? The President Coventry is running a big program called Fit for the Future. Excellent initiative. But I seriously worry whether we're going to see any results come out of that, because I think the bureaucracy is just too scared to innovate. Personally, I'm not sure that prize money, appearance fees is the right way to go for the Olympics, not least because the sums of money that will be involved when you're dealing with 10,500 athletes and more than 1,000 winning gold medal, if you take teams and everything, it's going to be a small amount compared to what they might be earning on a World Championships. But there is so much more that should and can and must be done to support the athlete, to empower them, and to help fund them. And I give one example. Currently, the athlete competes at the Olympic Games and is not allowed to post the image of his athletic performance on social media to raise his profile and brand. An athlete who competed 50 years ago still isn't allowed to post his image 50 years after the event. It is nonsensical. The IOC could tomorrow give all 100,000 athletes access to their moving image, because the IOC, I created the program that built the whole archive and library, and we have all digitalized moving images back to 1900. So you could give every athlete their moving image, You could allow them to engage on social media. Overnight, you would have 100,000 ambassadors. And people say, but what about protecting the TV rights? All that the broadcaster cares about is the live coverage. If you have to, put a 48-hour block, not a 50-year block. Oh, what about the sponsors? These are legal details you could work through. And that would all help to raise the profile and the support. The IOC, I think in a 4-year period, gives around $800 million to the National Olympic Committees for development. Now, should that part of that be redirected to each athlete as a training grant? Yeah, but you should look at that. So I think that there are far better ways to manage the financial support towards the athletes than just suddenly, oh, let's have prize money. Bearing in mind, most countries actually give important medal victory cash prizes for the athletes.
Now you gave me the headline for my next sport business newsletter, which will be the Olympic name, image, and likeness, NIL, because that's basically something similar to what's happening in college and university sports in America. Okay, guys, yeah, we have a question here, so let's engage a bit with the audience.
Okay. Good morning, Mr. Payne. As a digital marketing student and sport management student, I'm curious to know about, given the fact that you say that you created the Olympic brand in the pre-digital world, you know, and how has the social media and digital platform rising fundamentally changed the way major sports like the Olympics, major sports events like the Olympics, as to think about sponsorship and marketing rights? Also, I would like to know what is something that for people like us, for students, wanted to know, enter in the sport environment, the sport marketing environment, need not absolutely must take in consideration that the other people overlook. Thank you so much.
Great questions. The digital opportunity, I think, is probably like every single industry, the value and power of data. And sport is something that, you know, most people are passionate about. Whether it's their team, their sport, whether it's their kids at grassroots. And so you've got a platform or a story that people want to engage about. But you may want to engage on a different story to you and to you. And the whole digital data ecosystem allows you to engage with your fans one-on-one. And that is the incredible power that is, I don't think anybody's yet quite cracked the code, but we're very close to it. And you know, one of my other jobs now is chairman of World Volleyball, the business commercial arm. And there we are investing tremendously in the whole digital data ecosystem, because how you will communicate with the fan in China, to the fan in Italy, to the fan in Brazil is different. And increasingly, they want to have their own customized feed. So the marketing sponsor opportunity of being able to customize as opposed to a bland message. I mean, interesting journey in time, back to Cortina. Cortina 1956 was a defining moment in sports business. And not many people realize this, but it was the first time that the Winter Olympic Games were televised. And there was an amusing anecdote with it being the first time. During the opening ceremony, the final torchbearer skating around the ring didn't notice the TV cables that were stretched out on the back straight on the ice, and proceeded to trip over the cables and drop the Olympic torch. There's a debate about whether it went out or not. But the interesting fact was the IOC president at the time, watching this, said, Avery Brundage, we've done perfectly well without television for the last 50 years. We can do perfectly well without it for the next 50 years. But that turning point on television was what exploded sport onto the world stage. And the digital data is providing that same explosion onto your personal devices so that you are engaging in your own environment. And at the end of the book, having taken you on this journey over the last 50 years, I turn around and say, what next? What's the next 50 years? And proceed to make some fairly provocative observations. And one of them is to this point. Who will be the future broadcasters? Will it be the TV networks and stations that we all know? Will it be the new technology companies, the Apples, the Googles, Netflix, who are all dipping their toe in the water? Will it be some company we've never yet heard of? 50 years, remember, probably even 10. Or will it be somebody we all know? We all know very well. The athlete. The potential of the athlete to become their own broadcaster, because the athlete has total control over everything that happens beyond the field of play, and the content that is beyond the field of play of what he had for dinner, how he's training, who his dog is becoming as important in the storytelling as the field of play. And if you look at the top soccer players when they went to start competing on the teams in Saudi Arabia, they weren't just negotiating their fee and their transfer fee, they were also negotiating, we want complete control over the content to be able to repost. And if I'm an athlete with 1 billion followers, I'm about to become a far more important broadcaster than any of the old school stations. So that's your digital data side. Studying to break into the sports marketing career. This may sound heresy, but when I was hiring at the IOC, the least important subject was an interest in sport. Which, yeah, if you were passionate about it or interested, but that for me was the least interesting. It was the skill set of innovation, of thinking outside of the box, of solution solving, of customer, client, because I wanted to keep the partners happy. So get out there and make them happy. Yeah, you needed some professional skills, shall we say, from the legal world. But, I mean, part of the problem at the moment is that the IOC is just run by lawyers. I turned around to the former president, I said, President Buck, you're a lawyer, the Director General's a lawyer, your Chief Marketing Officer's a lawyer, all of their reports are lawyers. What am I getting wrong with this picture? Where are the marketeers? Where's the innovation? Where's the creative? And, when you're in the event side, at attention to detail. I mean, Bernie Ecclestone, who I spent 15 years, working for his right hand. I mean, attention to detail like you cannot imagine. There's a flower pot out of sync. I mean, it's the CEO running on. So, to creating the perfect product, the delivery, because you've got everything pulling you in different directions. It's a lot of fun. Yeah, it can be quite tense, get the adrenaline going from time to time. But also you're playing with something that people care about because they're the sport. So how can I take that sport and provide it in a way that people are going to be more interested? How can I get the next younger generation fully engaged? What's the story?
I think this is a very powerful message because in Italy there's a lot of confusion and universities are creating this, focusing people on the industry, not focusing people on what they really professionally want to do. So that's a very, very powerful message. It's very common that people ask you, I want to work in sport. And sometimes I reply, okay, Cristiano Ronaldo works in sport and even the storage manager is working in sport, both. But maybe they have different skills. Anyway, guys, if there's another question, okay, there. Thank you so much.
I have two questions, please. The first one, Olympic Games is the most exclusive event worldwide. Now, Milano Cortina has issued 240 gold medals. Is this amount of gold medals in some way fading the exclusivity of the event? The first question. The second question, what do you think about the idea to select one venue for the winter game and one venue for the summer game and to use them for forever as it was in Olympia in the ancient Olympic Games? Thank you.
I don't believe that the increase in the number of sports, which means the increase in the number of medals, is in any way degrading the value and prestige of the medal. An Olympic gold medal is an Olympic gold medal. And look in Paris with Djokovic, I mean, winning the Olympic gold medal. Look at how these close to billionaire athletes, break down as to what it means to them to get the gold medal. There are probably a couple of sports that by accident made their way onto the Olympic program, like breakdancing in Paris, that should never have been on the program, and I think devalued the program, and they've been very quickly thrown off the program. It was an experiment, it didn't work, mistakes get made and you move on. But I think in Sarajevo, I think there were less than 100 gold medals. So Milan, 40 years on, triple. I don't think if you speak to any athlete, that they would in any way say that it's devalued at all. The debate around a single permanent venue of the Olympic Games, that debate's been had from time to time, particularly when early on there was no long queue of cities wanting to host the Olympic Games. When people say it costs too much because of the infrastructure. Yet, the strength and magic of the Olympics has been because it has been, not saying refreshed, but reinvented by each new culture. When you took the Olympic Games to China, China made a major cultural contribution to the Games. And then they come here or they come to Paris. And it's one of the great challenges to the host country. How do you innovate, respecting the brand, the heritage, and the history? So I think where there is the opportunity to move it around the world, with the understanding that it doesn't belong to one nation or region, that's, that should be encouraged, but not to the extent where somebody's having to go out on a crazy building spree. And there's a debate now going on about the Winter Games with global warming as to how many countries could still successfully host the Winter Games. And should there be a rotation between, say, 5, 6 cities? I think actually when you look at it with a bit of flexibility, there's still a lot of destinations that can succeed. Do you want to build another Bob Luge run? No way. And I mean, I would now, at the IOC, I would make it a rule to saying any future bid has to come forward with an agreement with an existing Bob and Luge run, which means it's probably in another country. I think France 2030 will stage the speed skating in Holland because they don't have an indoor skating arena, and anybody who's been to speed skating and has been able to get into the venue in amongst the 99% of the spectators wearing orange will understand the power of speed skating to the Dutch. So there'll be some compromises there, but the IOC went through a period in the last decade where there were fewer and fewer cities bidding, and there was a reason for that, and we can take it offline, I can happily explain it. But they have now restructured the bidding process, and I think there's a whole new energy and momentum behind with, multiple cities putting their hand up.
We have another question here, please. Last one, maybe. Any other questions after him? No? Okay, so. Yeah. So we go for the last one because we're running out of time. I would stay hours, but I know you're also doing a bit of a sauna, so.
Well, he defined you the father of modern Olympic Games, and you have worked with Bernie Ecclestone, that probably is the father of modern F1. What is a lesson you've learned from him? And if you have another special episode similar to the negotiations with Russia for the F1 stage in Russia.
Yeah, you pick up on a theme that I try and address in the book, which is who were the characters and personalities behind the creation of the industry. And what amazed me was that there's been very few biographies written, on Mark McCormack, Horst Dassler, some of the early founders. There has been quite a lot written about Bernie, who is, without question, one of the most remarkable individuals, I've had to deal with. He's now 95, with a 5-year-old kid. All natural, Michael, no blue pills, all natural. And we speak every few weeks, and he is still one of the sharpest at 95. I mean, he's like 60 years old, so sharp. And I'm often asked, of all the incredible people that, have sort of dealt with, who were the gold medal winners in their skills? And for me, on the political front, Sam Ranch. Complete league of his own. On negotiation and business, Bernie. I mean, never, ever play poker with him. And don't bet against him either. I mean, he is, what he achieved and did with Formula One was incredible. And then actually from the business leaders who had the greatest strategic vision, and I had the privilege to meet all of the greats. Jack Ma. Jack Ma from Alibaba. Nobody had a clearer, simpler, strategic vision and the ability to communicate that. And he didn't understand the technology, but he could connect the dots and say, that's the perspective, the opportunity, and then lead the charge. So at that, I do, actually I don't think it's, forgive me, in the Italian version, it is in the English version where I do top 10 lists, they're all fun. Who were the 10 most influential in the sports business? Who were the 10 in marketing? And then I've got a 10, the good, the bad, and the ugly, as to who were the interesting characters. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Listen,
I think we're done.
Congratulations to the organizers for putting this together. Those of you, I think there's a few of you who are sort of studying sports business in the audience. Good luck. It's a fabulous career. And hopefully you may get the odd insights in the book. It's, I can assure you one thing, it's not dry. It took the lawyers an awful long time to get it cleared, and my wife is still worried about some of the stories, particularly with the KGB and others that I tell. All true, it's not fiction.